Hello everyone, welcome to Southern Wreaths. If you haven't yet, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and give me a thumbs up. Today I'm going to show you how I made this wreath using the Dollar Tree heart-shaped frame. These are the supplies I'm going to use to make this wreath. You would probably want to use a different color pipe cleaner. This is all I could find. So I'm going to start by adding pipe cleaners to my frame. You see I add them here at the crossbar, but I later on move them more towards the center. I end up adding 6 to the middle and 6 to the outside, so I have 12 ties total. I'm twisting 3 times and just kind of tucking them in. When I get to the corners and when I get to the points where I don't have them connected to a crossbar, I'm going to use hot glue, and I'll show you how I do that. You can add as many or as little pipe cleaners here as you want. This was just a good number for me. I felt that it covered everything really well. You couldn't see through, but it wasn't overcrowded. It made everything nice and fluffy. The main thing with this wreath is you have to mess with it a lot. You have to move it around a lot until you're happy with the shape. Like the round wreaths is super simple because they stay round. With this one in particular, especially at the top of the heart, it did not want to stay there. So now I'm going to go in between these on the outside. Again, twisting 3 times. This time I'll just pull the ties out to the outside. You don't want to twist it so tight that it squeezes the wires together, but you do want it to be tight enough to where it's not going to slide left and right. So right here, if you tried to twist it, it wouldn't stay. It would just slide to the left or right. So that's why I would have to use hot glue. And then while I had it out, I went ahead and did the ones that are without crossbars. The crossbars just help keep everything where it's supposed to be. All right, so this glue takes a long time to dry, so I'm not going to sit here and make you watch it dry, but I do hold it in place for a little while before I let it go, and definitely before I twist it. But I just make sure I've got it lined up properly, and then I just left it there to dry once it kind of set a little bit. And now I just go across and do the other side. And I'm only attaching it at one spot. You could do both if you wanted to. You want enough on there to cover everything and to make sure it holds, but you don't want so much that it's going to ooze out. And then I can just twist it and it stays in place. And you could also do this with the round wire frames if you have trouble getting them tight enough. And now I'm just going through and doing the ones that aren't at a crossbar. So I still haven't found my rotary cutter, so I'm just going to use my paper cutter. I'm cutting 20-inch pieces of mesh. I'm using pink, hot pink, and red. I ended up needing 24 pieces because I'm going to alternate the colors, kind of make a pattern. So I just have my blade at the 4 mark and then pull out to 24. And I'm just going to do the ruffle method. You could do a poof base if you wanted to. I didn't find that necessary. But I just have my phone on the end of it to keep it in place and hold it still, or hold it down so it doesn't roll up. And then I just gather it in my hand, kind of like accordion folding it. And I am putting 2 pieces per section. And this is 10-inch mesh. I don't know if I mentioned that. And I just like to use my Bodabra to hold everything together so I can add it at the same time. So I'm making sure everything's even and looks nice. And then I'll just grab it and add it. I wanted to add to the outside of the heart first, and then I'll move to the inside. Some of these I turn the pipe cleaners instead of doing where the cuts are up and down. I do the cuts left to right. And in this particular area, that's to keep a nice point at the bottom. And you'll see what I'm talking about once I, mess with it a little bit and shape it. That's the word. Once I shape it. At first, it looks really funny. It looks really odd, but just stick with it. It looks great in the end. And I just made a pattern. I did hot pink and then red on the bottom. And then the next one I'll do different. And then the next one I'll do different. And I'll just keep it in that. So this one will be the light pink with the red on top. And you could do all the same color if you wanted to. You wouldn't have to do different colors. I just liked the way it looked on this one, and this was a custom order, and that's what she wanted. You can see how I accordion fold it. I try to keep it as even as possible. Sometimes you'll have one that kind of sticks to the left or sticks to the right. It depends on where you get your mesh from, honestly. I find Hobby Lobby mesh is a little bit harder to keep nice and even. The stuff from like craftoutlet.com and stuff is really strong and sturdy, and it stays where you put it. But I believe you can work with any mesh. Just don't overwork it. I am twisting pretty tightly. I don't want anything to move around. Now here you see I did it like I normally do. I added the mesh like I normally do. And if you do that by accident, you can just grab it and turn it. And there you go. You've got it the way I'm doing it for this particular wreath. It doesn't really matter no matter what wreath you're doing, which way you add the mesh. I've just always done it the other way. But for this particular one on the bottom, I really needed that point to come out and not have a gap in it. But then again, at the top, at the heart, I did want that gap so I could separate it. And you'll know what I'm talking about as you're adding. So once I did the outside, I'm moving to the inside. Doing the same thing, just adding it and fluffing it out. And that bow dabber really does come in handy to hold your mesh. You could even put your ribbons in there with that if you wanted to. And just add them all at the same time. You do kind of want to be mindful of the colors on the outside and the inside. Okay, so right now it doesn't really have a shape. It's kind of like a triangle. So now I'm just going to try to fix the curved parts. So like I said before, you really do have to work with this wreath to get it the shape you want it to be. So there I was just kind of turning the pipe cleaners to put the mesh in a certain area. And now I'm just going to roll down the edges to create that nice V. I tried to use hot glue. It did not work. The mesh wouldn't stick to it. So eventually I will use pipe cleaners, and I'll show you how I do that. But here I'm just trying to fluff one part of it while another part is stuck in. I still don't get it exactly perfect with the mesh, but once I add the ribbon, it makes a big difference with the way it looks. You can see the tip looks fine. I got it nice and pointy. So it does have the shape at the bottom. So I'm just going to go ahead and add my ribbon. I'm cutting it at 10 inches. And then I'll just dovetail the ends of these. I do add ribbon to each section, so you need 12 of each ribbon. And you can cut them all ahead of time. I will go through and do that, but here I was just making sure that these are the sizes that I wanted to use. So I didn't want the ribbon to be too much because I really wanted to show off the mesh. And this frame is a little bit smaller than my normal 14-inch frames, so it worked having the ribbon a little bit smaller. I do like to add the ribbon to the inside first before the outside. I just like the way it fluffs. I'm going to twist it 3 times, and then instead of rolling it down, I'm going to tuck it behind just because it's not the right color. If you have a nice like red or pink or even white color, you can just curl it down and it just becomes part of the wreath. And then I like to create an X. I did end up missing a tie going through, so I had to kind of dig around until I found it. Because when you're trying something new, sometimes you don't know exactly where everything's at, so it takes you a minute. Not a big deal. I just went back and looked from the back to the front and saw where I didn't have ribbon and added it in. Okay, so here you can see where the V is. I'm adding the ribbon, and I'm wanting to make sure that I spread it out perfectly so it creates that nice heart shape. So again, you have to mess with it. You have to tuck things, you have to pull things. But it's so worth it because it looks so pretty when it's done. So here's where I finally decided to pull down the sides with the pipe cleaner. I'm just going to cut this one in half. So I stick the pipe cleaner through and it wasn't quite long enough to wrap around. So I just wrapped one end to the bar in the center and the other one I just tucked it around. I just kind of kept it there. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. This just kind of pins it back so it creates that nice V. And you could do anything, if you've come up with an easier way to do that, you could. I just kind of go with what I have. And that just kind of popped in my head to pin it back with a pipe cleaner and it worked out. So now I'm just going to create a tie so my customer can hang it up because the way this wreath is made, there's not really a good hook area to hang it up. So I'm just attaching my pipe cleaner. I'm just kind of feeding it through and wrapping it around different parts of the frame. I don't want the loop to stick out from the top so you can see it. So I wanted to make sure it's tucked down enough to where you can't see it. Then I'll just go through and reshape everything, but that's it. That's how I made my Dollar Tree heart-shaped wreath. If y'all have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, or you can always email me at craftingwithlee@yahoo.com. Thank you so much for watching, and if y'all learned anything today or liked my video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.